telling you. And it's great, just stress relief, because we all need that. So today, guys, we have Dr. John Kirtley, who is the Executive Director of the State Board of Pharmacy. And I will say, Arkansas, so my entire career has been in Arkansas, but I went to school, of course, in Louisiana, and saw a different relationship with the Board of Pharmacy and just kind of the profession of pharmacy than happens here in Arkansas. So we are really, really fortunate, because in Arkansas, you have kind of this really nice working relationship between the Board of Pharmacy, the Arkansas Pharmacists Association, the colleges of pharmacy, and it's just it's very collegial. It's very open, and they want to, be transparent with us. I can call up Dr. Kirtley at any time and just ask a question without fear of, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. And what I have learned is that ask first and then do it. That's the best way. But our Board of Pharmacy is just amazing. And quite frankly, just most states have a fear relationship with the Board of Pharmacy. And here we can call and ask questions and say, here's what we're thinking about doing. Can we do this? What do you think? They give us good counsel, and they work with the colleges seamlessly. So it is a blessing to have that kind of relationship in the state. And so when I reached out to Dr. Kirtley and said, hey, would you come and talk to our P1 class, without hesitation, he was like, absolutely. If my calendar's free, I'm there. And so I'm excited about that. And we're just fortunate to have that relationship. So Dr. John Clay Kirtley is a native of Camden. He completed his pre-pharmacy coursework at Ouachita Baptist University before graduating from the UAMS College of Pharmacy with his Doctor of Pharmacy degree. Dr. Kirtley currently serves as the Executive Director of the Arkansas State Board of Pharmacy and is a member and Vice President of the Accreditation Council for Pharmacy Education's Board of Directors and President of Malsagon, a professional association of boards of pharmacy across the Southeast U.S. Dr. Kirtley and his wife, Melanie, who is also a pharmacist, live in Little Rock with their 2 children, Allison and Jack. And so I am so excited to present to you guys Dr. John Kirtley. It is going to be an awesome session for you guys. Dr. Kirtley, I have given you co-host ability, so you can share your screen and do whatever you want. If you're sharing your screen, you may not be able to see the chat, but we've got some chat monitors in the class, and so they'll let you know if there are questions. And guys, feel free to ask questions. Dr. Kirtley will answer questions as he's presenting as well. So Dr. Kirtley, it is all your show, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Dr. White told me I was supposed to keep you guys busy until about 1 o'clock this afternoon. And I have to scroll around and make sure everybody's awake like I would do normally if we were actually in class together. So all joking aside, I'm so glad to get a chance to see you guys on screen. Looks like we got about 72 of you guys on screen, along with myself and Dr. White. As she mentioned, I am a native Arkansan. I am trained as a pharmacist, which you don't always find directors of pharmacy boards that have that background either. I always appreciate her statements about dealing with other states. I do like to say our agency is much different than I think most other state agencies, as well as most other boards of pharmacy in the country. We try our best to be approachable. We encourage student participation and students to watch our meetings. One thing I'm going to show you in just a minute is we actually have a 3-day board meeting next week. I would highly encourage you to get on we're going to be trying our YouTube channel, because we just look old because we have like white hair, or at least I do. I think I'm the only person up here with white hair at this point. But it is a completely different thing that many of you in your career will at some point have to come to the Board of Pharmacy for something. And it may be because you're a witness in something. It may be because there was a medication error. It may be because you're asking to do something innovative or get permission to do something in your pharmacy. But I always encourage people that it's much easier to understand how to deal with the Board of Pharmacy and to relax away from some of that stress if you've actually watched the board operate. And who knows, hopefully in a few years, some of you may be interested in being a member of the Board of Pharmacy at some point, or you may be on the association board, which is dealing with the Board of Pharmacy on changes and updates to our rules and regulations. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you guys some stuff that I'm going to walk through. Here we go. So if someone raises their hand, because it is over on one side of my screen, by all means, please let me know. If you have questions, that is one thing that is way different about us. We actually love questions. So If you just Google Arkansas Board of Pharmacy, so you don't have to remember the specific webpage, pharmacyboard.arkansas.gov. We actually have several different taglines or actually URLs that will actually get you to our website or link back directly to this. I'm going to go over a few things just so you guys know, first of all, like who we are, what we do, and who you're talking to. If you go into About the Board itself, it talks about the purpose of the Board of Pharmacy. And one thing that is different that I think some people get confused is we are here to protect the public health and welfare in relation to the legal supply of the drug supply and the medication supply into the state of Arkansas, as well as medical gases and some durable medical equipment. But basically any medications that you see in any hospitals, pharmacies, medical clinics, or anything else that have been obtained legally, the Board of Pharmacy had authority over that transaction to get those medications into the state. And then for any pharmacies, we have authority over pharmacists, student pharmacists, interns, pharmacy technicians, and the operation of pharmacies throughout the state. Now, some of my friends at the association, which, Dr. Vinson, who's a dear friend of mine, and we've been friends since I met him the day before his pharmacy school interview when I was, I think, a second-year student. The joke between the association and the board is, well, the association's here to help you and the board is here to get you. And we laugh about that together, even though we both know that most of the time, I mean, the vast majority, probably 90% of the time or more, we have the same ideas, we have the same thoughts, and we're really working together. Just so you know, our staff, we have like 9 of us right now. I'm going to show you our staff, but with our staff, these numbers were current, I believe, July 1st. So some of it has changed. We've gotten more pharmacists and we've gotten more technicians in that time. But, we regulate about 6,500, 6,600 pharmacists, about 4,000 of which reside in the state or work in the state of Arkansas, and the rest are elsewhere. That number of pharmacy technicians right now, I think, is right around 9,000. We have technician renewal at the end of this year, and we will lose probably 2,000 to 2,500 technicians at that time. And then in the next 2 years, we will actually go above and beyond those that we have lost. In-state pharmacies, it hovers between about 740 and 790, depending on the year. I've been here for almost 16 years, and that's kind of been the range. I think at one point it was right at 800. But that was short-lived, and part of that was due to like new permits coming on as old permits were closing. Institutions, hospitals, 1,700 wholesale distributors, and a lot of those are even pharmacies that have a wholesale distributor permit because of the shipment they do necessarily, or it's the fact that it is incredibly convoluted that one entity owns the drug, one entity sets up the shipment of the drug, one entity possesses the drug, one entity ships the drug. So for one bottle, there may actually be 4 wholesalers licensed because they split up their corporations for tax purposes in what I would call an idiotic manner that makes them get a whole lot more permits, which is whatever, good for us, we'll give you more permits. Charity clinics and some specialty pharmacies. And those specialty pharmacies are not for specialty drugs. Those are actually like methadone clinics, opioid use disorder clinics that would do things like dispense methadone for people dealing with opioid addictive disease issues. When you are talking to the Board of Pharmacy, you go back here. I'm going to tell you about our staff first of all. And I have to tell you that I deal a lot with boards of pharmacy around the country, and I would tell you that I believe that we have the most, probably the most qualified staff, and I think the best staff of any board of pharmacy you're going to see. This is my work family, and these are people that I know, that I love, that we all know what's going on in our lives, and we have just a wonderful group of people to work with. You've got myself, you've got Dr. Brenda McCready. Dr. McCready came to our office with something like 35 years of experience in the pharmacy world. Back for any of you, probably for you guys when you were little kids, for most of you, there were companies around called Harvest Foods. Dr. McCready was actually in charge of all the pharmacy operations, contracting, regulatory oversight for Harvest Foods, Jitney Jungle, and another group. But it was about 200 stores, or a little over, across, I think, 3 different states. So she has run and helped to regulate and, had to basically, oversee more pharmacies than most people will ever even visit in their lives, let alone actually have to have authority over on a direct basis for contracting and regulatory oversight. So she's an absolute expert in her field. Miss Lena Whitmore is our Chief Fiscal Officer. Actually, Miss Whitmore has the most years at the Board of Pharmacy, but when I first came on, Miss Whitmore was here. She went back to college, finished her degree, and became an elementary school teacher for a couple of years, as well as running a successful private business office. And then she decided that she would rather work with adults that act like kids than kids that act like kids, and we were able to bring her back in as our CFO. I tell that, and I also tell that apparently she went out in the world and figured out I was only the second worst person that she might want to work for. And I don't know who beat me being number one, but we were very fortunate to bring her back because she has years of experience with licensing and oversight, and was our person when I first came on that actually was even in charge of all of the pharmacist licensure process. All right, I see chats, so I'm looking at chats. Preach. Uh-oh. I'll take that comment. Luke Daniel. Luke is our attorney. Luke and I actually, oddly enough, graduated high school together from Camden Fairview School District, and didn't see each other for probably 20 years. And I literally ran into him at lunch one day downtown at a time that we were going to be looking for an attorney. And Luke, when we graduated high school, went to college, got his bachelor's degree, got his master's degree, and became a police officer and was in law enforcement, I think, for 8 or 9 years, went back to law school and was a prosecutor here in Pulaski County. And when I tell people that just a few months before we hired him, he got an improvement in his job because he got appointed to take care of gang violence and murder. And when your life gets better because you get appointed to gang violence and murder, it makes you scratch your head and go, what were you doing? But for about the first 4.5 years of him being a prosecutor, he did domestic violence and rape crimes. So he, at any point, would have 100 to 150 cases that were either domestic violence or sexual violent crimes, as well as then getting into gang violence and murder. So he has a lot of experience in the court system, being a prosecutor, and has a lot of experience that's very valuable to us as we have to build cases. Dr. Kevin Robertson, that you'll see next, he's a pharmacy inspector investigator for us. Kevin is a hospital pharmacy expert and a compounding expert through and through. He spent about 20 years in the private sector, where he was in charge of hospital pharmacy, residency director, and held a lot of hats going through pharmacy and therapeutics committees, dealing with pharmacy therapy. I mean, he's just, the thing about Kevin is if you ask him a question, be prepared for a direct answer. It's just the same thing you're going to get with me, because he's going to give you a direct answer if he has an answer for it. Try to keep my phone from ringing anymore. Then we also have Dr. Fain next to him, Cindy Fain. Dr. Fain actually came to us from the Oklahoma Board of Pharmacy, where she was there for right at 20 years. She was an inspector, the chief inspector, and even the interim director at the Oklahoma Board of Pharmacy. She kind of had reached a point in her career where she was thinking about maybe making a change. Her husband is also a pharmacist, and we entertained and talked to her about that. She came to Arkansas and saw that we actually had trees and they were pretty. That's funny. But we were very fortunate to bring Dr. Fain on a couple of years ago. She's also a community pharmacy expert and compounding expert. And if you are in a community pharmacy right now and you're getting inspected, you're looking at Dr. Fain. She does our community pharmacy inspections, and we have a vacant position. We're actually in the process to try to fill for another inspector that will concentrate on community pharmacy. The next row, these are oftentimes the people that you are going to deal directly with initially with the Board of Pharmacy. We've got Ms. Jennifer Bergen. Jennifer is, it says administrative analyst. She is in charge of all of our database systems. When our computers break, she fixes that. What's funny is earlier in my career, she was the one who processed all the intern licenses, and her desk was right outside the door to my office, and students would come in and they did not want to be in eyesight of me for some reason, because I guess I'm that scary or intimidating. But people would almost like crawl around behind her desk with her as she was trying to help process paperwork. She's like, no, please stay on the other side of my desk. But Jennifer is an absolutely wonderful asset to our agency and has really helped a lot of things that we've done to make our product and our offerings online available instead of everybody having to chase paper all day. Nancy Sweet absolutely matches her name. She is in charge of our pharmacist applications and our intern applications, and usually either Miss Sweet or Miss Bryant are one of the two that answer the phone initially on calls. Nancy is in the process right now. We have, since our board meeting next week is virtual, we have had 93 people from all over the country come in and take our jurisprudence exam that Ms. Sweet has set up, and then we're going to have to get them in on Zoom calls to finish up their reciprocity. And that is a feat that I would not wish on anyone, but she has absolutely handled it well. And we are still just plugging along, even though virtual is its own set of adventures. We also have Christy Bryant. Christy is the first person you see when you walk in the door. She's always going to have a smile on her face. If you're talking to Christy and she's not smiling, she's probably calling me because you've done something. Christy actually worked in pharmacy. She was a pharmacy technician for about a decade before she came here. She's in charge of processing all of our pharmacy technician applications. And what I absolutely find hilarious is that a lot of times people that are applying for technician permits try to tell Christy what they're going to be doing in the pharmacy. So someone who's never worked in a pharmacy is trying to tell our staff member who's worked in one for a decade, exactly what they think they're going to be doing, and she just has to laugh sometimes. Christy and Nancy both are the people that process everyone's criminal background checks. And a lot of people are like, no, that's not on my background check. Yes, it is. No, I don't think so. And they're looking at a state police or FBI background form going, yes, you have something on here. We can't tell you what it is. Jenny Chambers, and these titles are the way that the state has made us give them titles. So administrative analyst, database coordinator, business license analyst, and then extra help. And extra help is Jenny works here part-time. In fact, Jenny, when COVID-19 hit, I was in the office every day, and usually about 3 days of the week, Jenny was the only other person up here with me, which the days when she wasn't here became much more frustrating because while my office is in the back of our suite, she would be up front. And if someone rang the doorbell like UPS, FedEx, the mailman, or someone trying to get in for something, I literally have to break into a sprint across the office to catch the phone to let people in down at the bottom of the building. So during COVID, I didn't gain any weight just from the days I think I was having to sprint back and forth across the office, which was just fine. That is our staff. I'm also going to show you our board members. We actually have a change in our board members that's in process right now. First of all, our board president, Lenora Newsom from Smackover, Arkansas. Lenora is just an absolutely beautiful person. She has been on the board since 1991. The history she has seen with the board and the decisions and everything else are just amazing. And one of my favorite things about Lenora Newsom, other than the fact that she's been appointed by 5 different governors, I think 4 different governors, she is always the calm in any storm. And if you watch board meetings very much, sooner or later, you will see Dr. Newsom in a very calm way say, I just have to say this situation makes me very angry. If you hear Lenora Newsom say that a situation makes her very angry, it is not a good day because it's something that has been so bad or outlandish that's gotten there. Fascinating thing about Dr. Newsom, she is, even when she graduated pharmacy school, as unusual as it was, she is a residency trained pharmacist. And she's worked mainly in community pharmacy throughout her career, but she has always had that clinical focus of taking care of her patients from her 1980-81 residency that she did. Dr. Becca Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell is mainly, her experience has been in the realm of compounding and even through CGMP, which is a term FDA uses about manufacturing processes, and in 503B facilities, which are custom compounders to help take care of shortage drugs throughout the country. So she's been very involved in that way. Through the inspection process, receiving inspections in places she works, and actually does consulting for large-scale manufacturers or compounders at this point. Debbie Mack, Debbie, who lives up in Bentonville. Debbie actually spent, I think, 31 years with Walmart Corporation, moving up through the ranks, and was a senior director of regulatory affairs. The really interesting thing about Dr. Mack is she was in charge of regulatory affairs for Walmart for like 17 states all around the country. It's amazing because she has seen different regulatory approaches throughout the country that in many instances she's really been able to bring some of those jewels of knowledge back to us to help us become more effective. Dr. Lynn Krause, Dr. Krause from Lake Village, he owns, I think, pharmacies, something like 8 or 9 pharmacies all around Southeast Arkansas. The funniest thing I can tell you about Lynn is most of the time when he calls me, he's in his car going between either his pasture with his cows or from one pharmacy to the next, or he's on his way to Little Rock, or he's chasing, doing something for one of his kids or something. But Lynn is always thinking about pharmacy. Like anytime he calls me, even if it's about something informal, it's, by the way, what about this thought process that's something that is good or bad for pharmacy? Lynn also holds a position with the Arkansas Pharmacists Association on staff there where he works part-time. Brian Jolly, many of you will see Dr. Jolly because he is a director there at UAMS in their pharmacy system on the inpatient side. Dr. Jolly and I were actually pharmacy school classmates, so I've known him for a long time, not ancient history, but a long time. And it's very great to have Dr. Jolly along because his expertise in not only being residency trained also, but his expertise in how hospital pharmacy operations work is just a unique set of experience that most people do not have. We have 2 public members also, Ms. Carol Rader. Ms. Rader actually, most of her career she's professionally trained as a nurse, but actually worked in HR for a large hospital system. And it's very fascinating because when we are dealing with situations, especially applicants with the board, Ms. Rader has seen those types of issues as an HR specialist for a couple of decades before she retired. And she really a lot of times will think, do I believe this is somebody who would be a good employee to have around medications and taking care of people, or is this person going to be a risk that's going to wind up being a problem? So her expertise in that is very unique also. And then Miss Amy Four. Miss Four is actually the Chief Operating Officer for Mercy Clinic Fort Smith Communities. It's interesting because she did work in pharmacy before, like when she was working on her education as a pharmacy technician, but now she's actually in charge of something like 140 prescribers practices as a Chief Operating Officer or COO there. All of these people are wonderful people. They're great people for me to have on the board. The last one, it's not pictured yet because we're actually waiting on the paperwork, but it's Dr. Rodney Richmond, who is a professor at Harding College of Pharmacy and helps teach their law class. And Dr. Richmond has been a consultant and expert witness in trials and hearings and suits all across the country for a number of years, and really has a wide amount of experience in pharmacy from that side. A couple things I want to be sure to show you guys. I have to move stuff around my screen to get back to this. On our homepage, a couple of things I want to be sure that you're aware of is we've got these big red taglines like COVID-19, pharmacy procedures, frequently asked questions. That is a great place to find information of like rules that we have actually suspended during COVID-19, some of the procedures that are important, especially for our pharmacists in practice and for some of our interns as well. Like once you have your designation that you've been trained to administer immunizations, we have a rule that says you have to have current CPR, but while we have a state emergency with COVID, we have suspended that. So understanding that you really can't get a live CPR class most of the time right now because no one wants you slobbering on their dummies and practicing CPR, well, you can't get it, so you don't have to have it right now. There's also some federal exemptions in there that we have worked through that are separate from the state authority. Other couple things here on the left-hand side, the board meeting next week, we are wandering through some challenges with Zoom because even though Zoom is really great most of the time, there are always some weird little ticky things that don't quite work right. But next week we expect for our board meeting on Tuesday that morning, we should have links posted up to watch our board meeting on YouTube or via Zoom directly. People that have appointments with the board, we're asking to come into Zoom directly, and we'll let them in. People that do not have appointments but want to watch the board meeting can do so through our YouTube channel, is the plan. We will cross our fingers and hope all that works Tuesday morning. We also have newsletters, different hot topics. A couple of hot topics I would actually suggest that you look at, especially if you are having trouble sleeping at night. You can look at the pharmacy law update that's actually from last summer. We're in the process of putting some more stuff up now. I've done a couple of other legal updates that this reminds me I need to get posted on our website. But this oftentimes, each year I do a pharmacy law update at the association meeting. We didn't have a full association summer meeting this year, where we go over, here are some things that are important to our profession that have changed in the last year. Here are some statutory issues that have changed, or some rule issues that have changed that pharmacists need to know about. We also have things such as naloxone protocols, pseudoephedrine guidelines, and I believe there's one also, nicotine replacement therapy statewide protocols that are innovative practices for pharmacists. Last thing I'm going to show you briefly, and then I want to see what questions you guys have. Pharmacy law book. When you pull up in the pharmacy law book is split into two different areas: statutes, and some of these we maintain very updated, like the Pharmacy Practice Act. Some of them are historically there, and at some point we'll have a student on rotation, and it's only been 16 years. This is not our area of the law, but we do need to have someone go in and kind of clean that up. And instead of just having necessarily a link to it, actually where you can read it easily and not have to wade through a bunch of websites to find things like Controlled Substance Act for Arkansas. But there's the law, which is passed by the legislature, which are technically laws that allow us to exist, give us authority. Pharmacy Practice Act itself is the one that gives us very specific authority, a whole bunch of definitions, which are always necessary. It talks about things like medications other than vaccines, immunizations, may be administered to persons 7 years of age or older under patient-specific order or in subject to reporting. Well, there's a federal act right now that actually lowers that down to 3 years of age for people with training, but you can't use the statewide protocol because the statewide protocol only goes down to 7. So there's some weird, idiotic nuance that the feds say you can do down to 3. The state says you can do 7. The state has a protocol that allows you to do 7 and up. If you want to use the federal authority, you can't use the state protocol. It's really weird. Best I can tell you. Anyway, as you go through the statutes, these are all the things that talk about prohibited acts, what you can do, sometimes what you cannot do, fines, fees, different licensure types. I hate to say it's a boring read, but it's the law, and generally the law is a boring read. What we generally concentrate on most of the time is the pharmacy rules and regulations, and anything that is in statute that needs to be stated more clearly, or we've got it broken down into specific subsections, which may make more sense, are our rules. And some of these still say regulation, because in the last session, every time from now on, next time I go in and update something in Regulation 4, I have to change the word regulation to rule, because regulation sounds more onerous and more like a federal authority issue. So you can see that I have 4 of them that have been changed now to say rule instead of regulation, but over the next few years, they'll all end up being called rules, and they are referred to as rules. Most important for you guys, many of you already have a pharmacy technician permit, and if you are trying to work in a pharmacy, and right now the intern ratio is suspended, but later it probably will not be. It'll probably be a 1-to-1 ratio again. But if you don't fit in that ratio and you're working, if you have a pharmacy technician permit still, you can still function as a pharmacy technician. Having an intern license does not automatically make you a technician. You literally have to hold both permits if you want to work in one or the other. I did not make up that rule. That is something that I have inherited, but it has been a long-standing thing with the Board of Pharmacy since about 1992, I want to say, when technicians first came into being legally. Also, Regulation 4 is general regulations regarding pharmacies. It is the longest rule that we have, and it outlines all kinds of things about what pharmacies can and cannot do and how they function. The other thing I'm going to show you, though, is that I'll actually pull up is Rule 2, because it's about pharmacists. We recognize that you guys are entering this profession as student pharmacists with the grand hopes for all of us that you will be pharmacists here in a few years. And there's some important things in here, like changes in employment. If you are working somewhere for pay, or somewhere consistently, not a rotation from the college, not you stop to pick up groceries, but you're actually behind the counter working, you're supposed to let the Board of Pharmacy know. You're also supposed to let us know anytime that you move, because sometimes some years we can come in and do this before you've really turned in your intern applications. But if I need to find you for something, I'm going to call whatever information that you have given me first. So, and I'm going to tell you about how this is also public information. But if you give me your phone number, I'm going to call your phone number. Now, if you didn't update your phone number and it's your mama's phone number, I'm going to call your mama. And if I can't find you from whatever information that you've had and you're still in school, eventually I'll come to the school and I'll pull you out of class. And I've been here 16 years and I've only had to do that once or twice. But I'll go to the dean's office to say, I need to know what classroom, John Kirtley is in, because I need to see if I can meet with them after class. And sometimes the school will say, how about we just tell them they need to call you? And I say, that's fine. But if I don't have a call by such and such time, I'm coming to find them. Those are always fun days. Any information you give to the Board of Pharmacy or any other licensing entity is technically available to the public. In the state of Arkansas, we have very much a sunshine type of state on information that's held by the state. And what that means is under the Arkansas Freedom of Information Act, so it's known as FOIA, under the Freedom of Information Act, those are open records. The only things that are not available to the public, and some people argue this back and forth, but like your date of birth is arguable in most instances because in many places it says that's private and some places it's not. Now, the things that are definitely private though, we cannot give anyone your social security number. We cannot give anyone any of your health records. We cannot give anyone the actual result of what you made on a test. Now, if you fail a test and you have a letter that says you did not pass, that is arguably public information. But if you took the NAPLEX and you made a 76, that's not public. It's pass fail at that point. It's interesting because a lot of people don't realize their phone numbers, their addresses, their work addresses, all of that is public information. And it's not because I want it to be, it's because the law makes it that way. What's fascinating is we've had people say, just don't give anybody my information. Well, as the record holder at the Board of Pharmacy, if I refuse to give a citizen of Arkansas something they requested as a public record, I can be criminally prosecuted for a misdemeanor crime. And I'm not getting criminally prosecuted for withholding something that's supposed to be public information. So if you have a very odd specific situation where you have a stalker or something like that that's a legal matter, then I would suggest you have a post office box to use as your address. And I've had people over the years that say, well, I'm changing my name because I had a situation where I had restraining orders. So this is my name, but please put this other name on it. No, we give you a permit in whatever your legal name is. That's the only way we have to do this. Talks about internships. I'm going to show you a couple of things here. One is supervision. Supervision, whether you're a pharmacy intern or a pharmacy technician, means that a licensed pharmacist, and it says and or certified preceptor, that's for foreign pharmacy graduates, don't worry about that, but a licensed pharmacist supervise the practical experience of a licensed intern, both personal and physical supervision, and actually gives instruction to the intern to obtain the experience during the entire period of such experience. What this means is, as an intern, you cannot run a pharmacy by yourself. As a technician, you cannot run a pharmacy by yourself. And the question that we usually get is, well, what if I'm behind the counter, and I'll say Walmart, because there's a Walmart in every town in Arkansas, and the pharmacist needs to go over the counter and give someone some advice about headache medicine. Well, I understand that Walmart says that that's health and beauty on the front side of the counter, and it's the pharmacy in the box they can lock up. But they are still within eyesight and earshot of you. We are not concerned that the pharmacist is right on the other side of the counter. If the pharmacist needs to go outside of the Walmart for a smoke break and leave you, you shouldn't be in there alone. And I literally had a case on this a couple years ago that the person was getting great reviews until the corporate entity found out that they were taking a smoke break 5 or 6 times a day for 10 minutes to go smoke a cigarette outside the building and leaving everybody in there working. You can't do that. The other thing is, we get people saying, well, you have to go to the restroom eventually. And the Board of Pharmacy isn't here to say you cannot go to the restroom. But if you need to run over and go relieve your bladder for 30 seconds or 45 seconds, like, that's not a huge issue. Now, if you went and ate some kind of crazy food for lunch and you're having a peristaltic crisis for 30 minutes, that's like leaving the pharmacy for a while. Unless the bathroom's in the pharmacy, which good luck to everybody. But if you're having to go outside and you're away from that pharmacy for any extended period of time, longer than a minute or so, you should not leave interns behind. And interns, you guys should not be left in that situation. I actually know of some people that when they were in school were left in absolutely horrible situations by pharmacists that were not practicing and wound up having other issues. I had an intern on rotation one time that we wound up having to take a pharmacist out of practice, and the intern said, I didn't know when to address this, but I'm really glad that so-and-so isn't able to practice and is getting help right now. I said, well, why? Well, I was on a college-assigned rotation, an IPI, and the pharmacist was there one day and was all out of sorts and said, here, just hang tight. I got to go get a birthday cake for my kid. And she said, so I knew there were cameras in there, and I didn't know what else to do, so I sat on the stool, and I crossed my arms, and I sat there, and the pharmacist was gone for an hour. He said, but I knew there was a camera to show that I had not touched anything in there. So therefore, I reinforce this concept now, generally when I talk to students of, if the pharmacist wants to go eat lunch and leave you in there, that's not good. If they got an office attached to the pharmacy and they're sitting at their desk, no big deal. If they want to go to a restaurant somewhere, that's a big deal. They want to go get a haircut. I know an instance from probably 45 or 50 years ago where there were pharmacy students working and the guy went to go get a haircut, and while he was going to get a haircut, the pharmacy got robbed at gunpoint. And the pharmacist comes back with a fresh haircut and is like, hey, why are the police here? Well, they're here because we got robbed. He goes, what do you mean we got robbed? And the pharmacist had completely missed the fact that a gunman had come in and retrieved several controlled substances from the intern without even being around. So they had some explaining to do back in the 70s to the Board of Pharmacy. Talks also about all kinds of things about what type of training you have to have, rules applying to degree programs, and everything else. So I'm going to back up. I'm going to quit sharing my screen so I can see everybody and see what other chat I have. Is legal name change a public record? So if you have a legal name change due to a marriage or divorce or something else, and we have it here, that is a public document. But those are also public documents in the court system in general as well, unless it's been sealed or something by the court before you ever got to us. We're looking at your legal name now. If you had one way back, then that's a whole different issue. What other questions do you guys have?
I have two.
You're the only students in the nation that get to quiz the executive director out. What you got?
So I was gonna ask about the tech protocols that some states have. I didn't know. I know I work in hospital pharmacy.
Yeah.
And so we had heard about that several years ago, but I didn't know what was happening with that. And then the second question I had was about, could you talk more about, if you get your pharmacy license in Arkansas, but then move out of state, the requirements for maintaining both licenses?
Okay. So first of all, Tech, we do have some pilot programs. Dr. Robertson is by far expert on those because he was one of the first people in Arkansas to do it. So we have some Tech programs that have been piloted in healthcare facilities and hospitals. Our board has only allowed Tech in facilities that have barcode all the way to bedside. So that even when we're talking about filling up a med cart or a Pyxis machine, and I'm trying to use some generalized terms that most people will know or will see at some point in their pharmacy school career, that even if the wrong medication is put in that slot, in that cart or anything, when the nurse pulls the dose to administer it to the patient, because they have barcode at bedside, it should still be caught there. There are some states that have flirted with or have allowed tech final verification, which is a different concept. I do not see most boards of pharmacy in this area of the country going to that. There are a couple of boards of pharmacy that, quite frankly, they would say they are light years ahead of us as far as regulation or the elimination of regulation. But most of us in this area of the country, especially the South and the Southeast, are very, very deliberate about the rules that we either try to impose or remove, because as the pendulum swings, if I have a friend in another state that says, well, if they start teaching knee surgery to pharmacy students, well, in our state, there's permissionless innovation, and pharmacy students that learn that could go do knee surgery. Well, I got news for you. Y'all start going to do knee surgery, and pretty soon we're not going to be able to do anything, because it's going to become a political legislative issue, and we're going to lose steam on the strides that we've made. The other issues, that help answer that, Alexa? Okay, the other issue, so multiple states. How many of you guys think you're going to wind up in a different state? So, all right, I see a couple, and I see people going, no, stay in Arkansas, we're the best anyway. But so I tell students, especially if any of you think you may want to work in a different state during the summer, if you're going back home, or if you're going to try to go do something different for your summer, but also if you think that you may want to do a residency in another state or something like that. So 2 issues here. Number one, if you think you may work in a different state as an intern, you should already be in contact with that board of pharmacy. Whereas our office is in many instances very strange. We have a very odd phone answering system. We call it a human. That's funny, because most boards, it is very difficult to talk to a human. Even for me, I mean, I have boards that thankfully I have like a cell phone number for somebody on the board or somebody on staff. And that is a very, very odd thing, that as an executive director of a board of pharmacy, I have some boards of pharmacy that I cannot get in touch with a human. Some boards mean if you apply to them, they literally have a stack of, here are in-state applicants. And when we get through all those, we take care of our out-of-state applicants. And I have literally been told that by a couple of boards. And I think it is the insane, approach to it. It's ours is first come, first out. We actually took economics and we're like, well, your application came in today, so here's where it is. We process it, most of the time tomorrow. And the only thing that is a rate limiting step for us in general is criminal background checks. Now, for those boards of pharmacy, see what you can find online that tells you how you get an intern license. The other thing I would encourage you to do is be active in, like, if we have a regional ASP meeting. You guys heard of APH ASP? So part of my nerd credentials, which are weird, is that I was the national student president of ASP, but the first meeting I went to, I met people from our 6-state region. So then I had new friends that if I had a question about something in Texas, well, I know somebody that goes to, Texas Southern or University of Houston or UT in Texas. So it helped me to really have some connections for those other states to figure out what's going on there. And you can meet those people at regional and national meetings. That can really be a great asset. Now, as a pharmacist, this is 4 years down the road. Nonetheless, when you take your national exam, your NAPLEX, you have the opportunity to send that score to multiple states, because you either A, get a license by exam, or B, get a license by reciprocity. And if you are planning to move as soon as you graduate, you want a license by exam. Most states will not allow you to get a license by reciprocity until you have been licensed in an originating state by exam for at least 6 months. So you could choose to send your license by exam score to 6 different states, and most states will recognize that score by exam for 6 months or a year at least. You have to actually look at the specific state. But you could get an original license by exam in 3 states right off the bat if you wanted to, by going through that process. And that is the best way to do it. But once again, some states have very specific rules, like for sending in fingerprints, they have to be through like a live scan facility. Some states, it wasn't very many years ago that if you were getting a license in Louisiana, you had to go to Louisiana to get your fingerprints done by one of their approved facilities in order to submit them to the board. Does that help with question number 2, Alexa?
Yes, thank you so much.
Good
Question
deal.
regarding that. Is it the same like for residencies? If you're doing a residency out of state, do you have to, it's the same complicated process?
It is, unfortunately. And for a residency, most residencies are going to require that you have a pharmacist license in that state. And I think it's something for 75% of the residency. So for at least 9 months of it. And I'll tell you, Dr. White will tell you this, Dean Stowe will tell you this. I mean, everybody at the college is going to kind of have this common theme that you're going to hear that I tell seniors every year. I know they tell seniors every year. When it comes to things like NAPLEX, you want to take it early, not often. We will all tell you that you can see the passage rates on NAPLEX are the best straight out of school. Don't go, you know what? I don't really have to have a license for 2 months, so I'm just going to study for 2 months. You're not. You're going to get dumber in 2 months out of school, not doing rotations and trying to study and do something else. Even with the holdups we had with COVID this year, we all encourage you, take that test this summer. Take it as soon as you can, work on your RX prep modules or whatever. But if you wait for more than about 3 months out of school, the passage rate takes a serious dip. So get it done early, be prepared to sign up. What else? Yes, I said rate limiting step. I didn't know if that was funny.
It was funny. Stop it.
All right. Arkansas Board over the VA. So this is fascinating. Military bases, federal prisons, so Federal Bureau of Prisons like in Forest City, and VA are technically federal entities. So we do not have necessarily full oversight or authority over them, but just like with the VA, we had some intense discussions a couple of years ago where the VA has in many ways agreed to work with the Board of Pharmacy. And what you have to remember is to be a pharmacist in a federal facility, you have to have a state pharmacist license somewhere. So most of the people that work at the VAs here in Arkansas have an Arkansas pharmacist license. So they still do fall under our rules. But the main things they're worried about there are things like CE, updates of addresses, and things like that. Now, we do not necessarily have the authority to go in and like shut down the VA or fine them money for doing something. But we do have the authority to say, well, if we can't get along with the VA, then we don't count any of their rotations there. So you did 2 months of rotation at the VA. We didn't count them, so you got to do 2 more extra rotations to get a license here or work 320 hours that we log. Now, we take all those rotations at that time, but those are the types of things that when we interact with the VA, we do have control over. Let's see. Hey, Oklahoma's not that bad, Amanda Russell. I got a lot of
it wasn't bad, but it wasn't Arkansas.
No. We are super happy to have Dr. Fain here. Their former exec was a guy named John Faust, who was another close friend who unfortunately passed away at way too young of an age. But then their new exec, Marty Hendrick, and Dr. Fain also, they're both excellent people. I talk to Dr. Hendrick on a fairly routine basis, and we share some labs as well. What else you guys have? Because if we run out of time, Dr. White and I are going to design a workout for you guys.
You can't
We've already heard how much
in
everyone.
1 minute, right? You're good. We're good.
Everybody loves burpees. We already know.
And we can put it together for them, definitely.
I'm telling you. Apparently last night there was a workout after the class I went to. The one after that, they were trying a new thing, and it was, come try your luck at 6:30, and they have a bucket with things in it, and they pull things out of the bucket to see what your workout is.
Ooh,
Like, you stay in? I was like, I've done my one class. I'm not staying for that.
Exactly.
Gambling and losing is what that sounded like.
Exactly.
Let's see.
So
People love the trees in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
you talked about you had a number for pharmacists, like maintaining out-of-state pharmacists. license, like people who live out of state, do they
Sure.
all, like, are those like dual licensings?
Yes, yes. What it is in Arkansas, we are one of 15 states that if you have a pharmacy that is in Oklahoma, Tennessee, New York that wants to ship into Arkansas, that pharmacy has to have a business permit with us. But at the same time, you have to have an Arkansas licensed pharmacist in that facility. We're one of 15 states that has that requirement. A lot of people criticize us for that, but let me tell you that when somebody's grandma calls me and they are having a problem with an out-of-state pharmacy, I pick up the phone and, I go, Dr. White, you're in Louisiana. You are my Arkansas licensed pharmacist, and we have this issue here. How are you going to help us fix this? Or how are you going to tell us what's going on? At the same time, if that pharmacy fails to do something, then that pharmacist gets called in with them as a responsible party to help answer. So if I send a subpoena to Pharmacy ABC in another state, it's Pharmacy ABC, attention to their Arkansas pharmacist in charge. And if they don't answer that subpoena, then I charge the pharmacist and the pharmacy for failure to respond to legal order. And I'm not saying this to, say, hey, here's how awesome and powerful we are. It's a different approach that a lot of places don't see. So you'll see a lot of stuff even on, like pharmacist Q&A. I'm sure many of you are also in our pharmacist Q&A group that say, well, why don't they do such and such to out-of-state pharmacies? We already have, we are well within the top 25% of the rules out-of-state pharmacies have to follow, and have people say, we should be number one. I'm like, well, here's the problem. If you're the first one to poke your head through the gate, you're also the first one to get slapped. So at some point you have risk of having issues with like interstate commerce or federal laws that you lose more ground than you would ever gain. I think our approach has worked really well. But at the same time, it's just a really weird thing when we have people coming from all over the country to get licensed here. And for instance, I have no idea what you guys have going, but next Tuesday, our first couple of hours, we're going to have two groups of people, and they're all reciprocity. They're all reciprocating to Arkansas from different states. They've all been in our office and taken our test. And what we ask them is, okay, who are you? Where are you from? Where'd you go to school? Why do you need a license in Arkansas? And 93 people, 85 of them are going to be just blah, blah, normal. And then you're going to hear some screwed up stuff. It's like, we have a pharmacy that anytime we have a hemophiliac that needs this blood factor, we open it up and operate it. Well, how many hours a week do you work? Well, it depends on how many prescriptions I have. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. In Arkansas, a pharmacy has to be open 40 hours a week. But in some states, there's an office setting like I'm sitting in right now, and my office is Pharmacy A, and the one next to it is Pharmacy Z, and the one next to that is Pharmacy 2. And whichever pharmacy has a prescription that day, they go get the key, open it up, get the medicine, package it, and ship it out. And they may be open an hour a week. They may be open 40 hours this week. But you will hear some weird stuff in there. Got another Camden person.
I did have one other question. It's more about at what level are you actually able to regulate national, like corporations that work nationally, like CVS specifically, just because I'm familiar with them, and their policies on their pharmacies, like how many hours their pharmacists can work and whether or not they have breaks or things like that. Is that something that you're actually able to limit?
So here is where that is really tricky. And this is a reason I ask people to actually watch our meetings, because in our informals, I think Dr. White has seen some of this. Oklahoma was the first state we saw doing one part of this, and Arkansas is the first state we've seen doing another part of this. So when we have a med error, one thing that we do in our investigative activities now, Dr. Fain is heading up most of this for us. If we have a med error at a facility, what we've started doing this year, and we've got, I think, 5 cases kind of in the hopper coming up. We've already seen a couple of similar ones. We'll go in and we'll look at the audit log of who was working that day, how many pharmacists, how many techs, how many clerks, how many prescriptions they filled, whether they're extraneous items there may be at play, like flu shots or anything. So all the metrics you hear about. And our board has had some pharmacists in, and I'm not going to name any corporation names, but we've had corporations have come in where, Dr. Fain goes in and there's 5 technicians slinging pills like crazy, and there's 1 pharmacist there. And the ratio is 3 techs doing tech duties per pharmacy. You could have a tech dusting the shelves or restocking bottles that are empty, and that does not count in the ratio. But if you've got 5 people performing duties that a pharmacist has to say grace over, that crap doesn't work. I mean, I've worked in community pharmacy. I can tell you I could not do that safely. And what happened was, in a couple of instances, a major corporation got a $10,000 monetary penalty because we found that, and a pharmacist got a warning letter that is non-disciplinary saying, you should abide by the rules of the Board of Pharmacy in this. But if the board recognizes this is something beyond the pharmacist authority to actually make a true change, then the Board of Pharmacy has the authority to charge the corporation. We've had multiple instances of that. The other thing in our current thing, not only will we look at those logs, we've got 5 stores that we have gone and pulled like a week's worth of their hard copy prescriptions. And there are national articles where Oklahoma did a very similar approach. They hit the New York Times, and Marty Hendrick, Dr. Hendrick, my counterpart there, was quoted. He is more open to talking to the press about that kind of stuff than I am. Of course, we are in a different political environment as well of who I have to get permission from to talk about something like that. But he just threw it all out there, and it's ugly. And I can tell you that we have a couple of stores that to us appear to have more like an 18% error rate if you take very technical approaches of, well, they said take 1 twice a day. I said, yeah, but they forgot to put for 7 days. It's an antibiotic. You need to put for 7 days or until all taken, because you don't need to take it PRN. We have controlled substance prescriptions that they fail to put PRN on. So we have corporations that have said our error rate is less than 0.01%. And I'm like, you can't count, because you have not done the type of audit that we have, and there is something bad going on in this facility. And the board's going to have to determine what to do with these cases. I think that most of this is going to be at our December informal, but it's going to be fascinating to hear a corporation say, well, we only have X number of errors. And I had a conversation with one of these corporations. I said, well, if that's all the errors you have, I found them all here in Arkansas. Like, I found your whole company's worth of errors for however many stores in one place in 1 week. So I don't know if it was that way the week before or the week after, but I don't really think you want me to check either. So we have an approach. Actually, I don't know if Dr. White has heard this or not, but we have a regional American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy and National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, and our regions are the same as the ASP regions. So I sponsored a resolution Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, that we got passed, and it's got a lot more words, but it's basically talking about Pharmacists Association and Boards of Pharmacy around the country are continually hearing pharmacists outcry over workplace safety issues such as staffing models, metrics, and overall well-being of pharmacist staff members. And so this is where I have literally said, therefore be it resolved that our National Association of Boards of Pharmacy take a leadership role in examining the topic of pharmacy workplace conditions by appointing a workplace safety and well-being task force of members with experience in the oversight of investigative activities related to these topics, in collaboration with representative national and state pharmacist associations to engage and develop suggested guidelines and objective tools that boards of pharmacy can use in these oversight endeavors. And my intent would be that, Marty and I have staff that are already doing this, so we would probably be on that type of a task force, but we're trying to tell people pharmacists don't control everything in their work environment. And if a pharmacist cannot control it and change it, then we should not punish the pharmacist for being put in a situation where they are set up to fail. And I can tell you that while that is an extremely popular thought process amongst most pharmacists and student pharmacists, there are some people that have some major hate issues with some of us as directors talking like that. And we're okay with it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kirtley. I appreciate it, as I always do. Guys, I know we ran over today. I'm so sorry, but please have a great weekend. Thank you again, Dr. Kirtley. Your Camden native is happy to see you on here. She finally got to see you. She's heard about you, and so glad to have you on. You guys have a great weekend, and take care. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.